That's what woke is about.
You're very good, Mark.
I never did anything wrong.
It wasn't me.
Believe me, you are in for an absolute treat. You are going to hear the wonderful voice of Mark from Brighton, and what he has to say about our Mango Mussolini Donald Trump might just blow your mind. But what he has to say about the term woke definitely will.
I first covered Donald Trump in 1975.
Go on.
He was, at that point, a builder, developer, and he and his father had opened an apartment complex called Trump Village.
Yeah.
He was openly racist in that he never allowed black people to live there. Eventually, he got taken to task in 1975, and he ended up having to sign what's called a consent decree, which was that he had to stop discriminating. 3 years later, he had to sign a second consent decree. That's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
All right? It's as simple as that. This is a guy who, through the years, as many of your callers have pointed out, never, ever, and this comes from his father, never admitted he was wrong about anything. And that's how he's running the country. And put simply, to quote a Columbo episode, all he wants is all there is, period. He hates non-autocratic Europe. He hates Keir Starmer. He hates you. I hate to say it, but it's true. Donald Trump hates anybody that stands in his way or has any progressive bone in their entire body. And he thrives off chaos, which is why nobody can predict what he's going to do next, because he thrives on that kind of chaos. And the people who benefit from that kind of chaos. Does anybody know how J.D. Vance ended up being vice president?
Well, I mean, the word is that it was what Peter Thiel wanted, and that Trump was persuaded by one of his sons that...
That's right, Donnie Jr.
Yeah.
Donnie Jr. lobbied incessantly for J.D. Vance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the gig.
When you say you covered him in the 70s, in what capacity, Mark?
I worked at a radio station.
Oh, that'll never catch on, will it? Well, then you're well placed, because the 1973 stuff, I think Hillary Clinton brought up during the election, and it didn't land. I'll tell you the other thing it does, if we're going to get psychological, which we have done so far today. It explains his continuing hatred of diversity, equity and inclusion, because that was one of the occasions when he did actually get his knuckles rapped fairly robustly by the authorities for being a racist. For
You know what DEI actually stands for?
Go on.
Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka.
I'll ask you what I've asked everybody then. How does he get away with it? And for you, this is a 50-year canvas that you can paint on now. How does he get away with it? When some of the stuff you're telling me is so obvious, and much of it is on the record.
He gets away with it because for many years he was a New York phenomenon. All right, people in New York knew who he was. People in New York knew who his father bribed so that he could get, for example, the construction of a hotel that was against zoning law, that kind of stuff. And then people on the West Coast started knowing him when he started spreading his wings a little bit. But most people in the middle of America had no clue who Donald Trump was until The Apprentice.
Right.
And that whole "you're fired" thing, which is entertainment.
Sure.
Okay, I never watched it, but it's entertainment. That convinced Donald Trump that one day he could be president, because these people in the middle of the country would follow him once he developed a line that they could agree with and that they could align with. This is a guy who appeals to the religious right in America, who's been divorced 3 times, had I don't know how many affairs. I mean, it boggles the mind how easily people get away with it. But listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Before I go, can you do me a big favor?
It depends what it is.
Will you stop? Well, you can't stop. Will you tell people to stop using the word woke until they can define it?
I've done that already. I've written a bloody book about it, Mark. I've done my bit in this field, but
okay.
Yeah, no. I before you go, actually, you need to do one more thing. How does it play out? What happens next?
What happens next is whatever the most chaotic stuff he can dream up in his head is. The tariff thing is just the beginning. He's going to start coming down, and this won't really cause a ripple in the rest of the world. But he's going to start coming down on Americans who disagree with him like a ton of bricks. It hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's kind of happening, isn't it?
Very, very soon. But tell people to stop using... Do you know where the word woke came from?
Of course I do, yes. It was a good thing. It were people who were alive to or awake to discrimination and Oh, go on then, correct me.
No. In 1949, a blues singer by the name of Leadbelly, you know who he is?
No, Go on.
Okay. In 1949, Leadbelly did a song called Scottsboro Boys about 9 men who were almost lynched because they were accused of raping 2 white women. Eventually, they all got off, and one of them went into hiding. It's a very long, convoluted story. At the end of that song, Leadbelly does a narration where he says to northern black people who were traveling through the South, which was a dangerous undertaking in 1949, and he said at the end of that narration, stay woke. Be careful. That's what stay woke actually means.
Wow. Alert.
Yeah, be alert. Because if you weren't, and 5 years after he wrote that song and said that, a young kid named Emmett Till was killed by racists attached to a refrigerator and thrown to the bottom of a lake. That's what woke is about.
You're very good, Mark. How did you end up in Brighton?
My wife isn't here, so I can say this. She convinced me once I retired to come over here, and I enjoy it. I'm actually, in retrospect, I'm really glad I'm not in America to experience this. I was in New York like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and people in New York are beat down. They were beat down economically, which is why so many of them turned on Joe Biden.
Right.
But they're being beat down on a daily basis. I saw older people walking the streets who basically were clinging, and I mean clinging, onto a rent-controlled apartment because that was all they had.
And that provides fertile ground for the kind of fantasies that Donald Trump is selling again.
Oh, yeah.
I get it.
And by the way, if you want to see what Donald Trump is really all about, read Mary Trump's book.
That's the second recommendation today. And it still doesn't, no one can go all the way there, can they? Because that's his niece, I think, describing him in terms. You've got all of the things you remind us of, the court cases coming out of his ears, the things he said out loud, never mind the things he's been convicted of, the bankruptcies, the appalling associations, and yet here he is. There's something else, isn't there? There's something, if we were religious people, Mark, I don't know whether you are or not, there's something almost Faustian about this level of achievement, given the backdrop that you describe and that others have described all morning.
That means all it means is that if you have money to start with, which he did because his father gave him $3 million, and you're able to say, I never did anything wrong.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. To quote, who was that, Shaggy?
Shaggy, yeah. The sage, the great sage, exactly. Shaggy. Well, Mark, you deserve the title Great Sage, possibly rather more than Shaggy does. I hope that we'll talk again. I really do. That was fantastic. It really was. Not exactly uplifting, but, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, as Mark says. He's living in Brighton now, not New York.
Now, wasn't he amazing? And you could definitely tell he would have been a brilliant radio host, even today, wouldn't he? And also, I'm just wondering, can he do James's holiday slots next time? Because I would definitely tune in and listen, because he can definitely hold an audience, can't he? And when he told the story about the Trump village, I have to say I had actually heard a little bit about all this, but not enough. And when Mark spoke about Trump being openly racist, that didn't surprise me, and I can guarantee it won't surprise you watching this either, will it? But what he had to say about the term woke really blew my mind, because I had never heard that story before. Obviously heard of the term woke, but for me, just assumed that it just a new buzzword that the clowns, use to attack the PC brigade and stuff like that. So absolutely amazing. But what do you guys think? Did you know about what happened at Trump Village? And also, did you know about the story about the term woke? Also, Mark, please take over James' holiday slots too next time, because I'll definitely tune in. But anyway, what do you guys think, like I said? And if you enjoy everything else of Common, Select Comedians, and anything political, please give us a like and subscribe, and I shall just bid you farewell and take care, my friends.